Sometimes things turn out really well. So I'm pretty proud of these staffs. I'm glad that I had my little guy partially involved. He didn't do all the work on it, but you know what? Baby steps. And I think he's pretty proud of his staff too. So love to hear from you guys if anyone knows more of the tradition of Scout staffs. Hi, I'm Jay. Welcome to my big backyard. I'm switching cameras today, and I will use the other set because I find the mic's better, and for close-up it's good, but I'm always shooting a little bit too high. Today, I want to have a look at Scout staffs, or, well, walking sticks. And I've been working on two with my son. Part of the video will have shots from the other camera where we look at it from the beginning. I didn't take the time to video the shaving of this, which is a great way to practice knife use. Get out your pocket knife and start to strip this. This is also a year in the making in that I took these poles from a tree that was cut from my backyard, let them sit out in the weather for about a year, and it made them a little bit drier so they're seasoned, and the bark came off pretty easy. I scraped it off with I would use a saw blade and turn it sideways, and you can do a lot of scraping and then clean it up with a knife, and then everywhere there's a knot and there's a few spots, you don't want to smooth that out to the hand. Then we did a bit of sanding and added some Tung Oil. I like that, or linseed oil. I find it gets really hard. It's about 3 weeks now. I wanted to wait for it, but I couldn't wait to show people this stuff. And I wondered if the color would change, so we'll see that in the videos. I know that the outside texture is actually quite firm. There's a few coats on here. And with mine, I added a little bit of red stain and showed my son and said, hey, you want to add some red? And he only wanted a little, so he did one coat. And so that's not the natural color of the wood under the Tung Oil, although that'll give it a golden color. Instead, he had one coat. And I did 3 or 4 on here. I can't remember the count in the end. And I did some experimenting. I think the color turned out really well. And so this is sort of the beginning of your Scout staff or walking stick, because you may add some paracord or some other strapping with beadwork. I'm actually thinking about putting other handles on here and some paracord. And so as your journey in outdoors, bushcraft, and or scouting continues, you can start to build onto your staff. And I've seen a lot of people do different things. Now, this is sort of a dying tradition, unfortunately. I could be wrong, but I don't see a lot. Although I'm in a city group, and there's a lot of city groups around me, we're really not into going out and hacking down a green tree. And I think that would work best. And so it was my tree in my backyard. But you could find, if you're lucky, something that's only been seasoned for a year that's fallen over, and get that and strip it. What you're shooting for is something around 5 feet, go a little taller and a little more stout if you're bigger like I. So a lot of the scouters, maybe Venture Rover's age, you might want a bigger stick, but really 5 feet's enough. Later, I mean, you may not want to do this because they look really nice, but you can take a few of them, lash them together, and come up with a tripod, so something for holding stuff over the fire. In fact, they're probably even strong enough, if I had a third one, to even make a chair out of, or a couple of other interesting structures. But I love the tradition of Scouts, and some of the traditions, I think, lend themselves really well to some crafts, and this being one of them, because we've got a couple hours of cleaning this up. Doing the lacquering or staining, that you're not going to want to do that out in the bush. You're probably going to be in your backyard. You want to be outside because this stuff stinks. But in the end, you end up with a nice staff. This is maple. I'm not sure you can tell that from the shot. I just came up a maple tree. So I don't know how strong it's going to be, but they feel really good. They're not overly heavy. They don't pack away well. You're not going to probably lash that to your backpack. Although I'm going to attempt to take this on a hike trip where we're coming from the middle of the city to the outskirts of the city. And so part of how we're going to get there is on the bus. I'm not sure how these will travel on the bus. And then we've got a good hour walk into the campsite we're going to. I don't drive. That's because I'm visually impaired. And so some of the camera work I do, it's going to be weird. And I'll mention that from video to video. It is a big part of my life, but it's not the only thing. But it's going to affect how things look. And I think sometimes things turn out really well. So I'm pretty proud of these staffs. I'm glad that I had my little guy partially involved. He didn't do all the work on it, but you know what? Baby steps. And I think he's pretty proud of his staff too. So love to hear from you guys. If anyone knows more of the tradition of Scout staffs, this is a walking stick. It's a craft. It's kind of a badge of honor that you've gone and found your own stick and put some work into it. And again, this can develop over years. So I talk a lot. I get distracted really easy. Let's see what we can put together with this video and the other videos and hear what you think. about my Scout centers.
Oh, I'm gonna move over from the orange. I wasn't sure how these are gonna work out, but they do a great job of getting into the corners and grooves of different things. Right in here, a little V-notch, which I wanted to leave on my staff because I feel like if I'm gonna be lashing and stuff, it's just gonna make it more useful. So now, I get with the red, which is a little finer, but I don't think this is like 300 or anything. I can't even read the packaging. The one thing about just handling the wood, you kind of get into I don't know, one of those mindful states of just a moment. Think about what I'm doing, not what's happening in life around me, world politics or anything like that. Just sanding, and not a lot of thought to it, but it is very satisfying. So here goes number 3. But you can see the sanded versus unsanded. We get a closer look at the wood and the grain and everything else. I think you're going to still see the cut lines here, and definitely seeing it here. And it's nice to see all that sort of random, but I like that look. I don't think I could try to redo that somehow on my own. If I had some way to shape that, it just looks natural. Here we'll get this down to the same thing, but I'm going to get my little guy involved. So next stage is I'm going to give it a wipe. Let it dry off. Just going to get a tacky cloth to get all the dust off, and then I'm going to try some stain on it and see how that looks. Forgot to mention the kind of wood too. So just the sister or brother tree, or whatever you call trees, the tree. It's the same type of tree that was over here as a big maple. I think they're Manitoba maples, but I could be wrong. But just if someone knows trees better than I do, I know that's definitely a maple because I know the emblem on my flag. Plus I know a couple of different maple types. But this definitely maple wood here. I don't know if that's the best for this sort of thing, but it's what I got, and we'll see how it works out. So I'm going to try some of this Urethane wood stain I've had. I was going to use that on my floor, but then I tried it on a test piece. It was a little dark, so it darkened up the place, but I kind of want that on this staff. So we're going to just open that up, use an old t-shirt, give that a rub down, and see how it looks. See if I want 1 or 2 coats of that. I haven't worked with this before. I think it depends how much you put on, how long you leave it sit, and so on. I'm going to start light and see how it goes. Something of note, so I only put on a light coat there. I'm actually going to give that canister because I didn't think to do that. See as well, I'm going to let it sit there for a few minutes and soak in. Give it a wipe down, and then try another coat. It does stain, so I have a plastic baggie because I didn't have any gloves to go with my shirt underneath. You want to be careful with that, especially if you're working with younger people and you are going to use a stain. Maybe some gloves, and then some t-shirts, not only to wipe stuff on, you can just get some shop towels, but some junky old t-shirts and clothes you don't care about, just in case. Although it doesn't get super wild. All I did was dip my finger in, kind of like how I do shoe polish. I just wrap the cloth around my fingers and then give it a rub down. And we'll take a close look here. I think in today's temperature around 28 Celsius, so not sure that is in Fahrenheit, and just a slight breeze. It's probably going to dry up pretty quick. Like, it really seemed to soak that in fast, and that was what it's been drying for a year. And had it out of the rain the last few days, and already I can touch it. I do like how the stain brings out features, and you can see veins and knots and all that sort of thing. And just I don't know. We'll see what happens when I get another layer on there, and also after I stir it. But remember, something on your hands and clothes you don't care about, because stain does stain. Coating number 2. Not sure if you can tell on the camera if it's dark or not. I think it is. I gave it a stir too, but I think mainly it's just a second coat. So I'm going to hit it a third time. Well, there's a side-by-side of the Au Naturel wood and then the stain. Now that's got 3 coats, and I did give it a wipe after. I could have probably let it set a little longer, but I think it's going to darken up. I'm going to put some tung oil on it. I actually really like that. But I'm going to put a little just at the top so we can have a look at tung oil by itself. And then we'll be able to sand that off, because my little guy's got to come out and sand off his, get it nice and smooth. And we'll try it on top of this color. So 3 coats of I don't know, it looked like a wine colored stain to me. I wonder if wine would do the job, or even food coloring. Try that sometime. But a little bit on my hands, not a big deal. It'll wear off. Kind of makes me look like I'm involved in some kind of murder or something. All right, let's see what happens when we put the tung oil on it. I find it interesting. The longer it's drying, the lighter it gets. Now I don't know if that's going to change color in a few days. So I've got 1 layer of tung oil on top of 3 layers of the stain that I applied. And when it was first wet, it was so dark. And I think, and it's just a guess, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, but a lot of that coloring is absorbed right into the wood. And you could definitely see it around the knots and on the top. But as that sits in the sun more, it's definitely lightening, but it still has a nice tint to it. Really can see the grains of wood. Now I just did the tung oil on this one, and it looks nice too. We'll see what my son wants to do after, but I'm still going to get him to sand this down a bit. I think it'll be nicer on the hand, and we'll see from there, but that's a nice look. The beginning is the end. Well, not really. Here's a look at the final product, which we saw at the beginning of the video. But really, when we're showing each stage, this is a little closer to how we were looking at them, so you can have a close look. Let's get right in there. Time to start adding some bling.